Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Okay, welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a great show for you tonight. Roy Kaufman, who's our communications director and a fellow spokesperson for Ballot Measure 80, is here tonight. And Casper Leach are standing by to be the co-host, or otherwise known as the joint host. We have some film clips from our turn-in at the state capitol with Jeff Anderson from the United Food and Commercial Workers Local 555, a clip when we first qualified for the ballot that Roy did with Channel 8 KGW, and Willie Nelson excerpt from 20 years ago. We'll be closing out with a little clip from CNN about an attempt to reach out to the senior community that we hope to integrate into our campaign to win Ballot Measure 80 November 6th. We need you to register and vote for Measure 80 to legalize and regulate and tax marijuana sales to adults and restore industrial hemp. So stay tuned and we'll bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves. Welcome to the show, Roy.
Thank you very much,
Hey,
Paul.
Casper.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate
And
it.
it rocks to be working in the same foxhole with you and Paul, trying to end the prohibition and make an historic move here in Oregon, which I want to remind voters out there that will happen if you vote yes.
That's right. That's right.
So, Roy, you've come and worked as our communications director for about 3 months now.
That's right.
And you came with, tell our audience a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, I've been involved in issue advocacy and public relations for about 11 or 12 years. I've always been a student of politics. I've always been passionate about political causes. I did a master's degree in political science and national security issues, and actually started off working on those sorts of issues, defense issues, national security issues. When my wife and I found out we were having our first child, we thought, we were living in Los Angeles at the time, we thought this is a good opportunity to leave Los Angeles and find a place that makes a little more sense for raising a family. And so we came to Portland, Oregon, and we're very excited that we chose Portland. We've been here for about 7 years, and I've worked in various capacities on campaigns. Worked for as a spokesperson for the mayor of Portland for almost 3 years. So very.
So you
involved
came in
politics.
after that big scandal at the start of his term.
I did.
So you were kind of like a fireman in terms of. I think that's
was.
the term in
Yes.
communications
Yes,
parlance.
fighting,
I know that's
fighting
what
fires.
Dan Rush told me. That's where I heard it first, anyway. The guy from the national UFCW.
Yeah, it helps to know how to fight fires. Absolutely.
Right.
And you know, at the end of the day, that was also about trying to communicate issues and trying to move policy. So it's something that I've always been passionate about, and this issue that we're finally going to have on the ballot, this Oregon Measure 80, to end prohibition of marijuana and put some common sense policy into place. This is the kind of issue that I believe strongly in as a person, as a father, as a voter, and as a professional. So I'm very honored to be part of it.
How did you first hear about our initiative attempt and our organization?
Well, it was watching this program on a Friday night, in mid-2011. My wife and I were watching the show. And
Just
getting
channel surfing?
Just channel surfing.
Saw the little logo on the side?
Yeah,
probably
absolutely. And
grabbed
so, public access, this should be fun. Let's take a look what's on here. And then realizing, wow, they really know their stuff. They're actually taking tough questions and they're giving useful information. And it's live. It's an actual live show, and they're getting callers from around the country. This is not what you expect when you flip through the public access channel. So
Yeah, it's a little different than most of the shows on
so I thought it was
public access.
very exciting, and that's when I heard you talk about the campaign and the push for 2012, and so I went out as a sort of a research nerd of my own credentials, and I went out and learned about the issue, and the more I learned about the issue, the more angry I became about why things are the way they are right now. And the angrier I became, the more I realized I wanted to be involved somehow, in some capacity. And if the stars would align and allow me to use my professional skills to support an issue like this, then that would be ideal. But I really wanted to make sure whatever happened, I was somehow supporting this movement, which is overdue, but I know it's been a long, tough road for people like you who've been doing this a long time.
Some of us crazies that can, in a Don Quixote fashion, keep tilting at windmills.
What was it that first angered you about after you learned this, and then secondly, what was it that made you get passionately involved with this particular initiative?
Oh, that's good questions. I'm probably more of a liberal or progressive, like a lot of voters in Portland, but I'm also potentially a swing voter. I definitely think there are issues where I don't always agree with my sort of brother progressives, and so at the end of the day, I look for issues that I think are complicated, that can keep my attention, and that for whatever reason, through whatever lens you look at the issue, it doesn't make sense unless you are operating from the dark side, unless you are either operating as a cartel or a gang or organized criminal, or you're operating from a pure profit prison motive. This current situation doesn't make sense. So whether for patients, for seniors, for average people, for our economy, from every possible aspect, the more I learned about prohibition, the more I realized this is a system that is out of date.
And then the thing about OCTA that made you jump up and down and go, I need to get involved and make it happen was?
Well, it's in my adopted home of Oregon, and Oregon has a brand, it has a reputation around the nation.
We've been the leader in establishing a number of changes, whether it's the open access to public beaches,
right,
or the bottle bill, or death with dignity. We've established a lot of groundbreaking social policy. The initiative process itself was called the Oregon Option in 1902 when it was first introduced to the United States. I know Switzerland had originated the process in recent times. But.
Well, there's a myth. I only call it a myth because I haven't seen any sort of solid evidence of the story. But there's a myth from the times of the Oregon Trail, when settlers were coming west. But there was a point, somewhere past the Rocky Mountains, and it had a sign, and the sign pointed to Oregon and to California. The sign to California didn't have the word California; it had a picture of gold mines, and the sign for Oregon said the word Oregon. And the rationale that I've heard people give for this is, if you were going for the quick money, you headed to California and you tried to hit the gold rush. If you were literate, and that meant that you'd studied, and that meant that you were taking the long road, you went to Oregon. So I've always thought that was kind of a cool story, whether or not it was true. I thought it was really cool to think of what Oregon has become.
I've never heard that one. That's interesting.
Yeah. If it's a myth, it's a cool one, and if it's true, even better. But I think to answer your question about OCTA, I looked at what's going on in Colorado, I looked at what's going on in Washington State, and I thought, if this could happen in Oregon as well, it was this trifecta, these three western states that are similar in a lot of ways. I mean, not huge states, 4 million to 7 million people approximately, a mix of urban and rural areas, a mixture of conservatives and progressives, a mixture of Democrats and Republicans, and if it could happen in all three states simultaneously, it would have a massive effect on the national debate.
What got me so excited about OCTA was the way Paul wrote it for industrial hemp. It brings jobs here, and it brings all types of industry here, from making papers and fibers to creating fuels and foods. And when Paul wrote that into the initiative, that's what it made it just, I think, as you say, Paul, right, a poison pill.
Well, we tried to design it to be a poison pill for federal marijuana prohibition, in terms of we want it to be upheld in court, and we want to do away with the federal marijuana prohibition. So we designed it to be upheld in federal court. But in terms of the focus on industrial hemp, if you go to the Great Book of Hemp, one of the books out there, written by a fellow named Rowan. And on page 3, it lists my companies here in Oregon as the first companies to import hemp paper and fabric. You know, Jack Hare moved here to Oregon about the same time I did in '84, and wrote his book in my house back in 1985, the first edition anyway. And so I knew a lot about hemp, and tried to design a law that I really believe that marijuana is prohibited to protect the petrochemical industry from biofuels, and the wood-based paper and cotton industries from hemp development and devaluing their assets.
Yeah.
And so they spread this rumor that marijuana was a deadly new drug, when in fact it was the oldest agricultural crop and produces more fuel, fiber, food, and medicine than any other plant. So I just always, when I discovered that, I became passionate about that.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of voters in Oregon are going to connect with, is the issue of agricultural hemp. I mean, if you look at what Oregon's already known for, we're already known for a focus on sustainability. We're already known for a commitment to sort of craft products. We're already known for green building technologies, biofuel. I mean, you can't even go out and buy a new, Volkswagen TDI because there's a long line, because everybody wants the diesel capacity to be able to run biodiesel.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a place where biofuels and fibers and new technologies and green building are all already happening, and they're all very big here. So I think the opportunity for a farmer in Oregon who's currently growing grass seed or soy or wheat to be able to grow something like industrial agricultural hemp, and to be able to sell it to companies within Oregon and keep the money within our economy. I mean, keep it as a local growing economy.
Well, and that's why we have the backing of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, is because they see it as an opportunity to be on the cutting edge of these exciting new environmentally sustainable industries, and to create several new industries and thousands of new companies and tens of thousands of new jobs with industrial hemp.
Yeah.
And so, and we've recently been reached out to by the American Pulp and Paper Workers Association, another union, and we can, we've seen with the overcutting of trees and forest resources in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, forests we thought would never disappear are gone now. And so we have the mills have closed down that make fiberboard, make pulp and paper, and we can provide them a new resource to start those mills up again.
That's
and,
right.
And as you
give the money to our farmers instead of the other players out there, and it'll just realign, especially the hemp biofuel, because research shows that feral hemp in the United States produces 3 times more biofuel, hemp biodiesel from the seed oil, than any other plant species out there. That if we can establish that, the cost of hemp fuel is going to be significantly less than the cost of any other fuel on the market.
Yeah. Well, we heard from the UFCW folks here in Portland. They've got a facility, a corn ethanol processing facility on the Columbia River, that had to lay off 40 workers.
They went out of business.
Yeah,
they
went out of business
down
because they couldn't afford to use corn as a fuel. And right now, if you look what's happening in the Midwest with droughts and the lack of corn, the prices are going up. And they said very clearly, we'd love to be able to reopen this facility and hire back those 40 people and support their families and their communities and run it on hemp biofuel.
Yeah.
And there's no reason
the
we shouldn't.
Rainier, Columbia County area.
That's right. I mean, speaking of endorsements, you were talking about UFCW. We also got a big endorsement last week, which was the NAACP.
That was the biggest one.
Yeah, the NAACP endorsement.
Thank you.
Is very, very exciting. We're very honored to have NAACP as endorsers and
the
supporters.
National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. They're
That's
the
right.
oldest and most esteemed of the
That's right.
civil
Founded in
rights.
1909.
Yeah.
And they've been doing civil rights for more than a century. And so for the NAACP to come on board and say we support ending prohibition and regulating taxing marijuana is basically saying we cannot justify the current rate at which
the war on
communities of color are
marijuana
being
users
That's right.
disproportionately attacks people of color.
Absolutely.
And African Americans are arrested much more often
That's
for
right.
marijuana crimes, not
That's
just
right.
in Oregon but throughout the country.
I don't have the specific numbers, but it's
Yeah,
the
it's a
majority
multiple
of people
other
in prison.
groups of people.
The majority of people in prison in America are people of color.
Mhm.
The majority of people of color in prison are there for drug-related offenses, and the majority
Yeah.
of those are marijuana offenses.
And then another thing is that even people who aren't arrested for marijuana initially, they'll get out on probation or parole, and then when they test positive for marijuana use, they get kicked back into prison again.
That's right.
So
That's
this will relieve that whole
Yeah.
pressure from the criminal justice
It's kind of like ending the Jim Crow laws by ending the prohibition. With prohibition intact the way it is.
Just the name itself, marijuana. If they had said that they were going to prohibit hemp in the 20s and 30s, and they never would have got it through, because everybody knew what hemp was.
Right.
But nobody realized. They said it was a deadly new drug called marijuana, playing on this term from a Mexican Revolutionary War song, La Cucaracha.
That's right.
We might. I know when I was a kid, I heard Bugs Bunny singing it a lot.
Yes, but not all the
cartoons.
lyrics, just the first part.
Right, but then in that they say the cockroach smokes marijuana and falls down.
Right.
But after the Mexican Revolution, they nationalized the petrochemical industry. They took the whole oil industry and took control of it with the Mexican government. The American investors were infuriated that their assets had been seized. And that's when we saw the first terms about this deadly new drug called marijuana starting appearing in Texas, the center of the petrochemical industry at the time.
Mexicans want to step on your shadow and date your white women.
Yeah,
oh my God.
like that.
That's right. Well, I mean, it's hard for a lot of people who are not familiar with this issue to believe that most of this prohibition has been predicated upon, racist and sort of corporate
misinformation
interests.
campaign.
And it's hard for a lot of people who are new to the issue to accept that, because the next thing that you must say to yourself then is, well, if that's the case, why do we still have prohibition in place?
Exactly.
You know, if there was a civil rights movement in the 1960s, if there was a gay rights movement from the 1980s to the present day, but with major inroads in the past decade, if we've overcome these issues, if there's a disability rights movement, then why do we still have this prohibition in place, which is affecting, people of color? It's affecting everybody. But
which is why the Oregon voter needs to recognize again that they are involved in creating history in many ways. By being involved on the forefront of voting this into office. You are voting it an end to prohibition, not just in Oregon, but ultimately across the entire United States. And when the history books go to make reference to how this prohibition came to an end, it will first open up by saying the voters of Oregon went down and voted into law in the year 2012, Octa.
That's right.
Well, we've got a couple steps to go to before that, and one of the most important ones is to mobilize our community like you, and we need you to register and vote. If you didn't think you had a reason to vote, but you've been disenfranchised because you had a choice between Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and there was nothing to vote for, you don't have to vote on everything else, but be sure to vote yes on ballot measure 80. We need you to vote. We need to get your kids to vote, get your brothers and sisters to vote, get your parents and grandparents to vote, and vote yes. Tell them why it's so important for the future of our world and the future freedom and the future of our state to pass this bill. We have a video from KGW Channel 8 here from back on July 14th with Roy here, and I think that's the first time you got on television supporting
I believe so.
Measure 80, just after the day after we made it. So we're going to roll that clip, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Now have a chance to make marijuana legal to everyone over 21. Late Friday, the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act got enough signatures to make the November ballot. News Channel 8's Wayne Haverly has been talking to people on all this controversial issue, and he joins us live with more from both sides. Hi, Wayne.
Hey, Abby. Supporters say that the state's struggling general fund would get a massive boost by selling marijuana in state licensed stores. However, opponents say all that money is still not going to offset the health risks. Oregon just jumped to the front of the line in an effort to decriminalize and tax marijuana and hemp.
This is an industry that is already booming. It's already Oregon's biggest cash crop. $200 million a year is the estimate.
That number would likely go even higher if voters pass the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act. By selling marijuana at state-licensed stores, it's estimated more than $140 million a year would go to the state's general fund. And just like alcohol and gambling, 7% of the revenue would go to drug treatment programs.
The concept of additional revenues coming to help support treatment agencies is an interesting concept. The question will be, will it be enough?
Dr. Andy Mendenhall treats drug addicts and says European studies show a link between marijuana use and depression.
What's concerning is the fact that we know in young adults that marijuana does become a gateway drug.
Voters have strong opinions on the initiative.
I think that would not be a good thing.
Personally, I don't use it, but I think it's a great idea, and I think it's so easy to get it already. They might as well legalize it and make money off of it. It's good for everyone.
The legislation also legalizes hemp, a strain of cannabis already used by Oregon companies to make products like milk, clothing, even biofuels. But right now, hemp seeds can only be purchased from other countries.
It doesn't make fiscal sense to spend money fighting something when you could be making money regulating something.
Well, now Oregon joins Washington and Colorado. All three states have similar initiatives to legalize marijuana. And a recent Gallup poll, it really shows that attitudes on this issue seem to be changing. According to that poll, more than 50% of Americans now support legalizing marijuana. Abby?
Very interesting, Wayne. Thank you.
So that was from KGW back on July 14th, just
Nice
after
job.
we made the ballot.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Good work.
Yeah,
Good
my
work.
pleasure. My pleasure.
So the campaign is in full swing now, and you've been working on various messages and communities we're trying to reach out
That's
to,
right.
like moms
Absolutely.
for Measure 80.
Absolutely. So, if you're watching this, if you're a mom or dad or grandmother, or grandfather, a senior citizen in our community, we absolutely, especially want to hear from you.
And we need to reach out to those communities. If we can
That's
win
right.
those communities,
That's right.
we can win this
That's
election.
right. That's right. And just like we talked about NAACP endorsement, representing a specific set of communities, but also a broader principle to civil rights. If you are a mom or a grandmother, if you're a senior, we're starting groups, Moms for Measure 80, Seniors for Measure 80, and it's an opportunity for you to be involved in the campaign in a really meaningful way by lending your voice and sort of giving a face to one of the many communities that supports common sense cannabis policy.
So if you want to get involved, you can go call us. Our office number is 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. You can ask for Roy or myself, or you can go to our website and fill out the web volunteer form at OCTA 2012. That's OCTA2012.org.
That's right. If they go over to the Get Involved tab, you'll see a form right there. You can put your name and address and contact information, and you can check off which boxes are sort of up your alley, whether it's putting up a lawn sign or whether it's writing letters to your newspaper or other ways to get involved. But we need people from across the state. We know you're out there, and we need people from across the state to put their voice into the chorus so that people who are in power understand this is not a fringe movement. This is a movement which, according to the latest polls in May and June of this year, put about 53 to 56% of Americans supporting legalization in some form of
According to
regulation.
the Rasmussen poll in March, I believe it was.
That's right. That's right. So,
And there's one senior group that you forgot to mention,
okay,
seniors in college.
that's right.
We can use them to help manpower and knock on doors and to let
Make
people
sure
know
you're
that-
registered to vote.
Right.
In
Every
Oregon.
voter that we can register to vote in Oregon that will go out and make sure you mail in that voter. It basically is the same as swaying several people, because adding one more vote in our column, I think the guy, Jeff Anderson from the UFCW, he said that it's the equivalent of changing 8 people's mind. That was his equation.
Yeah,
We have a little clip from Jeff Anderson
Oh, great.
we should run, since I segued into it so beautifully here. Let's look at this. This is on July 6th at the Oregon State Capitol. Jeff Anderson, and representing the United Food and Commercial Workers Local 555, the largest private sector union here in the state of Oregon with 19,000 Oregonian workers. They have backed us because we're going to create thousands, maybe tens of thousands of new living wage jobs with benefits. So here's Jeff Anderson from UFCW Local 555.
United Food and Commercial Workers Local 555 and our international union supports the legalization of cannabis because we look at it as a jobs issue. In Clatskanie, Oregon, we have 40 people, 40 of our members being laid off because there's a corn ethanol plant of which they can't get corn. They cannot get the corn at a price because of the change to making ethanol and corn and use it in food stocks. It's not economical. It would be economical and would have 2.5 times the effect to use cannabis seed instead of corn. This is an opportunity for a plant to put people with a family wage jobs back to work. This is also unleashing the agricultural community. My family's been in the state of Oregon farming since the 1860s, and we were affected by the hops prohibition. During the prohibition of alcohol, we were unable to grow hops. We're now in that same discussion period where we're looking at the same discussion points of prohibition and repeal. It makes sense, it's economic, we can unleash thousands of jobs in agriculture that add value to the Oregon economy, while also taking the drug off the streets from minors. Minors having access, it would be treated the same as alcohol is today. So this is an economic issue. My international union looks at it from a retail union. We look at it from a pharmaceutical dispensing, or members that are in pharmaceuticals, pharmaceutical employees. And we also look at it as agricultural processing, of which we're one of the larger unions in that industry. Thank you.
Thank you. So that was Jeff Anderson. We were talking a minute ago about the biofuel company out in Columbia County on the Columbia River, and I know that they've laid off 40 workers, and they've been using corn. But corn, takes food out of the flow, and so what the use of corn as a biofuel stock has done is driven the price of food up. When we make hemp from seed oil, we'll be putting food into the supply, because every 100 gallons of hemp seed oil we'll get about 300 gallons an acre, perhaps better, because we're looking at numbers from feral wild hemp. We grow hemp and try to develop it agriculturally, then I think those numbers will come up. But even with the feral hemp, we're talking 300 gallons of an acre made from 8,000 pounds of seed. You press the seed. Once you've got the 300 gallons of acre, there's still 6,000 pounds of high protein hemp seed meal left over. It goes right into the food supply. And that protein perfectly matches humans' nutritional needs for
sure does.
The 8 amino acids and the essential fatty acids, the omega-3, 6, and
Didn't
9.
they use a hemp porridge through a couple
if you
famines?
look at old literature, if they refer to gruel, I know it doesn't sound that appetizing when you say, "I'd like a bowl of gruel, please," but I think that that will reestablish that. It's pretty nutritious.
Very nutritious, and it gives you all the, and then you can plant it again, and it gets farther down in the soil, and it cuts back on soil erosion. So therefore, you can start growing more in your community.
That's right.
In spite of the fact that you might have been dealing with drought conditions at the time, it can help you recover land.
Well, I think at the end of the day, this whether we are successful in Measure 80 will really come down to an education campaign. It's going to be about getting people who are not familiar with marijuana and with agricultural hemp to understand the history of it, and also to understand how we can do a better job of regulating it, of making sure it's for adults, just like we make sure that liquor is for adults, and by regulating it, getting it out of the hands of kids and helping keep it out of the black market, and helping to erase the black market, which is really where a lot of the problems lie.
One of the things that I think agitates Paul and I and a variety of other activists is that the bud, the plant, the smoke, whatever you want to call that, is like 1% of the plant and what it can make. The valuable part of the plant really isn't so much of the bud as it is the stalk and the seed, right, Paul?
Yeah, I really think we need the seed, and that the seed is where the economic value is in that oil, biofuel, and protein and food. And in fact, if you look at the market up in Canada right now, it is just that way. The main thing that's being sold in Canada from the hemp harvest today is the hemp seed oil and the hemp protein. Hemp seed oil is being used in soaps and a lot of different body care products for
Right.
women. You can't even go into any of these beauty stores without seeing marijuana leaves on a good percentage of the products these days.
That's right. The Body Shop, I know this because my wife is now a shopper there, but the Body Shop sells this hemp hand lotion.
Yeah.
And
The Body Shop
the-
really pioneered it. Anita
Right.
Roderick, who the late great Anita Roderick was
Yeah.
the founder of the Body Shop,
That's right.
and she made a film about Jack Herer, who wrote
Mhm.
that book here in Portland about industrial hemp. She made a film about him called The Emperor of Hemp,
Yeah.
and
Well,
rolled out hemp products all over the United
it's
States.
and it's an incredible product. I mean, I know we're not shilling for advertise, but unless they want to advertise or support
No,
the
we
campaign.
can't advertise on
But-
cable
but,
access.
But we'll take
We need
contributions
donations,
at the campaign.
so,
That's right.
desperately.
But
Well, and I think
that's
it's amazing too that the Canadian government values this cash crop, that it even underwrites advertising hemp products to outside countries,
Yeah.
and it underwrites the production of hemp products and the growing of hemp plants for industrial use, and they want their farmers to continue to do so for a long time. Unlike the American government, who hasn't yet been able to embrace the amount of jobs and the amount of product and the amount of money that will generate from having this prohibition ended.
That's right. And I think it's 1% of Measure 80, the tax revenue to the general fund, or there's also 1%.
90% goes to the
but-
general fund.
But 1% will go to promoting the industry.
Yeah, actually
That's what-
2%.
or
1% will go
okay.
to promote hemp biofuels and
Okay.
biodiesel.
Right.
And the other 1% will go to promote hemp food and fiber industry.
right.
So
And-
2% of the proceeds from the sales of marijuana to adults will go to reestablish
That's right.
hemp industry. And that was kind of my idea in terms of using the jujitsu of the don't laugh at me, using that as a means to put hemp back in there. That's the reason they used to prohibit it, and that's the way we're going to bring it back.
Well,
That's
I think,
right.
I mean, Oregon as a state promotes most of our industries.
My Japanese is not
Your
that great.
Japanese is excellent. If you're on the coast, if you're an Oregon fisherman or a crabber, then that Oregon Dungeness crab is a brand that you sell across the country.
Our
And
Tillamook
and
cheese
worth
is a
Tillamook
national
cheese,
product.
absolutely. Or Oregon wines, Oregon Pinot Noir, or Oregon craft beer. We do a lot to promote the products that we create.
We're big
in
in
the state.
hazelnuts too.
Yeah, filberts. They
Yeah.
like to call them here. It took
Yeah.
me about 5 years of living here to understand what people were talking about on that one. But what everybody else calls hazelnuts. But yeah, it's normal, and it's a good investment to promote your state's commodities and your state's crops in a way that helps to get a higher price for them.
Mhm.
Otherwise you end up getting paid commodity prices, and that's no way to support a family or a community. But
Right.
on the beer front, one of my closest friends is a brewer at Bridgeport, which maybe not ironically, but Bridgeport, before it was a brewery, was many years ago, was a hemp rope company. They manufactured and they produced hemp rope and hemp fibers there.
I know that Jeff Anderson of the UFCW had talked about how the prohibition on alcohol impacted his family as Oregon hops producers.
That's right.
And how they had to close all that industry down.
That's right. That's right. When alcohol prohibition took effect, the federal government came in and they tore up all the hops trellises, all the hops farms, which is had been a major part of the rural economy in Oregon.
Woody Guthrie sang about it in his songs that go to Oregon to harvest your hops. There's a line in "Roll On, Columbia, Roll On."
That's incredible. Well, so that's less than 100 years ago. Fast forward to today, and Oregon's craft beer industry is a $2.2 billion a year, billion with a B, $2.2 billion a year is Oregon's craft brewing industry, and that's everything from Oregon grown hops to Oregon yeast and malt and barleys to the bottling, the processing, the marketing, the sales, and then what happens with breweries like Rogue Ales and others.
They're shipping overseas.
They're shipping
and
overseas.
bringing
There's a
in,
huge market in
Japanese,
China and Japan.
yen and
Yeah, China and
Chinese.
Japan are buying up Rogue Ales, and that money is coming back into Oregon, into our economy. So,
And that will happen when we create hemp paper, hemp fibers, hemp products.
right.
We'll be able to export these products from our state to other states.
And as the other areas regulate cannabis, we'll be able to legally export and brand our cannabis products.
And you can't ship these jobs overseas. If you're going to grow 40 acres of
That's right.
industrial hemp in your farmer's backyard, he's not going to harvest that and then send it to China to create hemp shirts. He's going to take it to a factory just down the street where local jobs are being created so that we can have an economy where parents are paying to send their kids to school. And since we're not arresting anymore in this state for growing marijuana, that means we should be able to keep libraries open and
According to Harvard economist Jeffrey Myron, we will see over $60 million a year in savings in the criminal justice department for the courts, the prosecutors, the police, the imprisonment of peaceful, nonviolent marijuana growers and dealers.
And that's a lowball, isn't it?
People who test positive while under supervision for some other. Yeah, that is lowball. I really believe it'll be more than that.
Right.
But we'll also see another at least $140 million a year in annual revenue. I know there was just an economic report this past week on Washington's I-502, which isn't as broad as ours. It's probably the most carefully controlled version of legalization we see in the election between Washington, Colorado, and Oregon.
That's right.
But they said they're going to bring in, what, $5 billion over...
I think it was $2.5 billion over 5 years. But I mean, that wasn't the campaign saying that.
No.
That was the state of Washington's budget office, their financial analysis report saying, you know, this is a financial impact statement. If this passes, we may see up to $2.5 billion in revenue over the next 5 years.
Oregon's budget analysis was much more conservative. They said that it will probably cover the costs of the program and make money, but they did not.
They didn't really get into the full exploration of hemp.
They didn't talk about hemp at all, but neither does the I-502. That's just from the sale of marijuana. Hemp is a $1 trillion crop that we could put Oregon on the cutting edge of. Hemp biofuels, canvas, rope, lace, linen, building materials, plastics, foods, body care products.
I know that in North Dakota they've
100,000 different products.
They have legalized, haven't they, in North Dakota, industrial hemp, but they're
North Dakota and Oregon back in the 2007 legislative session legalized industrial hemp, but they can only grow this ultra-low THC hemp, and we remove those artificial restrictions on the THC level in our proposal.
So we don't have to sit around and wait for the DEA.
We say that the strains that produce the most and the best quality hemp fuel, fiber, and food will be the ones that are grown without regard to the THC level in the plant. So I think that what they've done with the low THC hemp is they bred out the THC, which means they bred out the flowers. By breeding out the flowers, they bred out the seed, oil, and protein.
The question was, you know, the farmers can't start growing, though. They've passed industrial hemp there in North Dakota.
That's right. They have to import that seed from a special company in France. That is a patented strain. It's not a stable cultivar. It naturally produces offspring at 1% or more THC, which is more than allowed under that law. And so the only way you can import that seed is with a license from the Drug Enforcement Administration. And the Drug Enforcement Administration is not giving out any of those licenses.
And so this passes all of that, correct?
This bypasses all that with a strong states' rights argument. You know, we wrote it to be upheld in federal court. I always saw it being enjoined in federal court. So we designed this bill specifically to deal with the federal court challenge that I look at as inevitable.
You've written it in such a way that if they do waste the taxpayer dollars to drag this whole thing through court, you've already won it in advance.
And the Attorney General's office will defend it, and their defense will be financed by grower and processor license fees. We aren't going to impose the costs of this legal battle on the taxpayer. Growers and processors like me who want to get those licenses and participate in this market will be the ones that finance this federal court challenge.
Excellent, excellent.
And I think that if you're watching this and you're a conservative or libertarian or independent voter, you know, this is really one of the most interesting issues out there because it's not just a partisan issue. You know, if you are a firm believer in states' rights,
it reaches across party lines.
Absolutely. If you're a states' rights champion, this is a states' rights issue. As a matter of fact, people may not know this, but when Mitt Romney was being interviewed in one of his many press conferences, he got asked a question about his position on marijuana legalization, and his first answer was, isn't that a states' rights issue? which is very interesting to be given, because he was also, as much as he doesn't say it, he was the governor of Massachusetts, and he was, therefore a states' rights champion in his own right. But we also have the support and endorsement of the presidential candidate and the vice presidential candidate for the National Libertarian Party.
And the Green Party, I think.
Governor Gary Johnson and Judge Jim Gray, who are both very conservative political figures, now libertarian candidates, but they see this as an issue squarely with libertarians, that it's about individual rights and individual responsibility.
And in addition to the endorsement from the NAACP this week, we also got another important endorsement from a kind of natural endorsement from the Oregon Criminal Defense Lawyers Association.
That's right.
So they voted to endorse our Oregon Cannabis Tax Act. So we want to say thank you to the Oregon Criminal Defense Lawyers Association. Thank you to the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Thank you to UFCW Local 555, the American Pulp and Paper Workers Union, and we need you to get out and register to vote. A big key constituency, as we talked about, would be moms, but we also have to reach out to the senior community. I know the polls show that the place where we're weakest is among senior voters.
That's right.
And so
So if I'm all excited and I want to go make this happen, I'm sitting at home going, yeah, what can I do? What can I do if I'm at home? How can I do to get involved?
Give us a call at 503-235-4606. Call us at 503-235-4606 or go to our website at octa2012.org. That's octa2012.org.
Yeah, I want to.
Okay, we want you to. So we're reaching out to senior voters. I know there's a campaign that an associate of ours, a fellow by the name of Bobby Platshorn, has been developing called the Silver Tour.
That's right.
And so,
the Silver Tour, and he's actually got a half-hour special coming out called "Should Grandma Smoke Pot?" And
should she?
Absolutely, if she needs to.
I think she should vaporize or eat it.
That's
right.
There you go. That's
Capsules are a real good alternative for people who
so
don't
let
want
Grandma
to
get in my stash.
But if you see the special, you'll see. I don't want to be a spoiler, but you'll see basically this tour going around the country, talking to seniors in their communities, at their community centers, at their retirement centers, and bringing up doctors and bringing up scientists and bringing up patients and sharing the story of people who are champions for medical marijuana in the many states, the 26 states,
17 states.
Well, no, how many that don't have it? It would be the 33 states.
All the others left.
33 states of the union that don't have a medical marijuana program.
It's ironic that the District of Columbia has now enacted their medical marijuana law.
That's right.
It was voted in at the same time that Oregon's was in 1998, but Congress enjoined it in what we call the Barr Amendment to stop it from being going into effect. But in 2007, Congress reversed. No, 2009. 2009, Congress reversed that.
Right.
But we have a clip from CNN about the Silver Tour. We're going to run that right now, and we'll be back in just a moment.
I was just superficially aware of it.
I had no knowledge at all of it, I would say.
I'm interested in medical marijuana.
Tell you what I'm going to do. How about we pass a resolution? That's not a bad solution.
I'm Robert Platshorn, and I'm the founder of the Silver Tour and the man who spent more time in prison for marijuana, a nonviolent offense, than anyone in the history of America. I was in federal prison for 30 years for smuggling marijuana. When I got out of prison, the last thing in the world I expected to do was become an activist.
Tax medical marijuana.
Nobody speaks to seniors. When Prop 19 was defeated in California, I looked at the exit polls and I saw that seniors voted 65% against. That's my generation. We invented marijuana as it's known today. I mean, we were Woodstock. The list is so long of things that can be treated with cannabis. People with arthritis, people who have trouble sleeping, who would like to be able to smoke a joint and go to sleep. There's a medicine that can't do you any harm. No one has ever died from marijuana. The savings to the taxpayer, to the drug user, to the insurance companies, is billions upon trillions of dollars.
I learned today that many of my friends who have disabilities and are incapacitated can benefit from medical marijuana.
Please, let me sign a letter to my congressman. I'm old. I can't wait. We need this stuff now. And how come you didn't bring samples?
I'd like to try it. I would really like to. I have many medical problems. I don't like the fact that you have to smoke it. If I could take it in a pill or some other way, chocolate candy.
I have a request from every state in the union to bring the Silver Tour. And when we can find enough sponsors, that's what we're going to be doing. All we really have to do is allay their fears. We don't have to sell medical marijuana. These guys smoked it back then. They know that it's pretty good. And if you can go to bed with a smile, you're so much better off.
So that was an excerpt from CNN with Bobby Platshorn and talking about his Silver Tour, helping organize seniors for medical marijuana. We want to run this new video he's produced.
That's right.
Should Grandma Smoke Pot in senior communities across the state.
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
if you're out there and you think you want to get involved in reaching out to senior communities and are reaching out to help our new group, Moms for Marijuana Regulation, then call us at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. Or go to our website, octa2012.org.
That's right. And if you're a senior and you're involved in your community and you believe in this issue, call us, like you said, and we'll find a way to come into your community and talk to your friends. Talk to your Rotary, talk to your council member, talk to your retirement community, wherever you want us to come and help. Educate your friends and your family and your neighbors. We'll be there because this is an incredibly important issue, especially for seniors, and especially for seniors who are, voting primarily with their wallets and with their checkbooks, and looking at the state of our economy and looking at the budget cuts that face our state, and the fact that social services are being cut, the social safety net is being eroded because of those budget cuts. And we're talking about a measure here that does two things. It stops wasting money enforcing marijuana offenses when they are non-violent offenses. These are otherwise law-abiding people, and it brings new money into the state. So it's combined. It's saving from wasting money, and it's generating new money. And
it'll create tens of thousands of new jobs in several new industries. There's no doubt about that.
And if you're, at the end of the day, this is what I think it comes down to, and I think this is what we're going to really be talking to Oregon voters about, especially if you're not convinced yet, if you're not really sold on Measure 80, you're not really sold on marijuana legalization. You just have to answer one question: has prohibition succeeded? Has prohibition accomplished anything it was supposed to accomplish? Has it made us safer? Has it made us wealthier? Has it reduced supply? Has it reduced demand? Has it done anything that it was supposed to do when it was brought in? And the answer to all of those...
And is anything going to change in that? Is it going to suddenly become successful?
Right.
The
well,
answer
prohibition has failed in every regard that it can be measured, unless you are a drug cartel or unless you own and operate a private prison. In those cases, it's probably working for you. But otherwise, it's not. It's not working for everybody else.
Prohibition is a luxury item.
Prohibition is
we can't afford it anymore.
Yeah,
we can't afford it anymore.
Yeah, no,
I mean, it used to be a luxury that our society used to pay for. Now we can't afford it.
There's no doubt that it has been prohibition causes more harm than the drug has ever caused by multiples. And it's torn apart families. It's torn apart communities, and individuals are being sacrificed on the altar of this ideal that we've got this squeaky clean America, that as soon as marijuana's gone, we'll all have Ward and June Cleaver as our mother and father, and it'll be
we'll all be hanging out with the beaver.
Yeah, and Wally. And trying to stay away from Eddie Haskell.
Right.
Well, I think
you kind of look like Eddie.
I get that sometimes. That's not the first time I've heard.
You got some pretty groovy bottles here, Paul. What are these about?
Well, this is an old cannabis tincture bottle. a Park Davis bottle. I was just in a Park Davis building in Detroit. You know, we have clinics in Detroit, and I had to go back there. And the hotel I stayed at, just a few blocks from our new office location, was a Park Davis office complex right on the Riverwalk.
Cool.
I could look out my window and see Canada, kind of like how, you know, Sarah Palin could sit on her porch and see Russia.
Right.
But I could really see it, not like her, because I could really see Canada. And there was a whiskey
Windsor.
plant
You can
right
see-
across from
right.
Park Davis. Yeah, in
Cool.
Windsor,
In
Canada,
Windsor,
which is
Ontario.
south of Detroit. I
That's
look
right.
south to Canada. There's an old whiskey distiller there, and during Prohibition, they would bring whiskey across, and they built a building just on the other side of Park Davis that was very tall, so they could watch the rum running. During the winter, the river freezes over, and so they drove cars over and trucks, and there's still the remnants of the cars and trucks that broke through the ice on the bottom of the river even today. So another cost of Prohibition.
That's right. Well, again, you know, prohibition of alcohol failed to accomplish anything that it was supposed to accomplish. The only thing it did accomplish was the creation of organized crime that plagued America for decades.
You had things like the St. Valentine's Day Massacre
and this
Al
is
Capone.
This is a point that I think, you know, I'm a parent. I have 3 small children of my own.
I'm a parent. I have 3 almost grown
That's
children.
right. As a matter of fact, almost everybody on the campaign, a lot of people on this campaign, volunteers and staff alike, are parents and
Our other 2
grandparents.
chief petitioners are our grandparents.
And parents, absolutely. And people, if you're watching this and you're a parent and you're not really convinced and you're afraid that maybe regulation will mean that marijuana is easier to get, that it's harder to control, it couldn't be further from the truth. As a matter of fact, when you look at prohibition, here's what happens when you tell somebody that they can't have something. What's the first thing they do? They try and get it. It's the forbidden fruit. When something is prohibited, it becomes much more attractive.
Yeah.
And secondarily, when something is prohibited, it means you can't educate people about it. And so what we are saying is...
you can't regulate.
And you can't regulate and enforce it.
On liquor, you got to show an ID, whereas on
drug dealers do
buying
not
pot, you don't
ID.
have to.
In fact, it's the other kids in the school that are selling. I know.
You were on a talk, you know, sort of conservative talk radio interview on this past Friday night, or a couple Friday nights ago, and KXL Radio with Greg Jarrett.
Yeah, which is just down the street from our office here at
right.
Ankeny and 18.
And somebody called in, and he was a man was very upset. Was talking about his child or a child of a family friend that had sort of gotten into marijuana and then sort of went on to do other drugs. And this man was making the gateway drug argument. And I think for parents, this is something really important to understand. You know, when you
marijuana is a gateway to the black market.
That's
it's time we close that gateway. We need to take marijuana out. What happens is it sends the wrong message to kids that they're taught that marijuana is a dangerous drug. They discover those are lies. Destroys the credibility of warnings about other truly dangerous substances.
That's right.
And it's a gateway to good health. There's a
it is an antioxidant. It's an anti-inflammatory. It has a lot of health benefits.
That's right.
That's not the strongest point we want to make in terms of, but for medicinal use, that is one of the reasons it's such a broadly effective medicine for such a wide range of conditions.
And the medical marijuana, correct me if I'm wrong, but the medical marijuana program in Oregon will remain in place even after Measure 80 is successful.
This is more of an industrial.
We won't need it anymore, but we didn't want to do away with it because patients were worried that they wouldn't have that access. So we kept it in place, but we superseded it with a new, better system. So they'll both exist side by side until people just don't use the older program.
And this is more
industrial,
industrial,
why do we want to pay $200 to $250 a year to grow a plant? Under our proposal, anybody will be able to grow it without a license.
And this is more of a job creation program. This is more of an industrial bill than a medical bill.
Willie Nelson noted that in his ads, and we've got a little 30-second ad that Willie did for us last March. I got to sit in studio in West LA and watch Willie record several new songs, including one for the soundtrack of the new movie Lawless. It's just out in theaters. So right after he did that song for this new movie Lawless, we recorded this ad.
Hi, I'm Willie Nelson, and I urge you to support the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act to regulate marijuana and restore industrial hemp. This initiative will end adult marijuana prohibition and let our criminal justice officers focus limited resources on real criminals and not on marijuana users like me. OCTA will also allow farmers to grow hemp for fuel, fiber, and food, to create jobs and help our economy. Please support OCTA. Thank you.
I really believe if we can win this election in Oregon, Washington, and California, that's going to be the Berlin Wall moment. Like the toppling of the statue of Lenin in Red Square, it'll signal the end of the drug war and the war on marijuana users. And I'd like to say thank you to all the patients at THCF Medical Clinic. You know, you're the ones that made this possible. We were able to fund a petition drive with your help and your support, and how we're help you get doctors who help get medical marijuana permits. If you or a loved one need help finding a doctor to qualify for Oregon's medical marijuana program, or Washington's, or California's, or Michigan's, Hawaii, Colorado, or any other state in the union, give us a call at 1-800-723-0188. You can call around the country at 1-800-723-0188, or call our Portland number, same as for our petition drive for now, 503-235-4606. And we want to close in talking about the initiative.
Yeah,
so Roy, I want to thank you for coming in and lending some professionalism to our communication strategy.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. And thank you for everything you've done for this movement. I'm very excited about where this movement is headed, and on a national level, and then of course here in Oregon. I think we have a chance to do what Oregon has been doing for a long time, which is, whether it's the bottle bill, like you said, or urban growth boundaries, you know, and better use of our land, light rail.
The bottle bill.
Absolutely. You know, the Death with Dignity Act, or so much else that Oregon has done first and set the pace for the nation on certain debates and certain issues. We have a chance to do it again, and really move the needle nationally, and change the conversation to something that makes a lot more sense.
I agree. Thanks for coming on, Catherine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roy.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, viewers. We'll be back next week. We're off at the Seattle Hemp Fest this week. That's why we have a recorded show. But we will have a new show in our new studios as we figure out the technical difficulties that are in front of us. We'll increase our production values. But thanks for watching, and tune in next week and help us restore hemp.